Chuck Rosenberg, can you jump in on Betsy's good point there? And can you also, you've said on this program before that you believe Robert Mueller likely has Donald Trump's tax returns. They're shared within, I mean, the FBI is the FBI, the federal prosecutors. I mean, would that lead you to believe that the prosecutors and the investigators in SDNY also have access to Donald Trump's tax returns and any other financial information?
Nicole, it's hard for me to imagine, having been a white-collar prosecutor, that if you're doing a white-collar case in a district as sophisticated as the Southern District of New York, that you wouldn't have the tax returns as one of the very first things in your investigation. It's not that hard to get. There's a federal statute that specifically provides for it, and I imagine that's precisely what agents and prosecutors did in this case. I wanted to expand on one very important but subtle point that Mimi made, if I may. She talked about the 18 redacted pages in the Cohen search warrant affidavit. That is only information in the Cohen search warrant affidavit. It's probably not the full extent of the information that the Southern District of New York or the FBI has on that particular scheme. And remember, too, that Cohen, when testifying before Congress, said there are some things he couldn't talk about, and that was specifically one of them. So this is probably a piece, maybe a large piece, but just a piece of the information that federal prosecutors have about that illegal campaign finance scheme. This is only one document pertaining to one person, pertaining to several searches of his stuff. I'm sure there's more.
Let me play for you, Frank Figliuzzi, Congressman Eric Swalwell talking about possible changes to the law that could increase the president's legal jeopardy.
I don't think any person should be above the law. And what concerns me is that right now the president may escape criminal liability because he could win a re-election and the statute of limitations could run. So if the policy is that you can't indict a sitting president, which I don't agree with, we should rewrite the law that says that if a policy like that prevents you from getting indicted, the statute of limitations can continue to run so that once you're out of office, you could be indicted.
So are you writing that law?
Yeah, we're working on that. Yes, actually, that is in the works. But I do believe there are indictments waiting for this president.
Do you think, Frank Figliuzzi, and it's amazing to even put this question together to someone like you, do you think if the laws change that Donald Trump should seriously be concerned about a criminal prosecution?
Oh, absolutely. I think he should be seriously concerned right now. And for the record, I'm for anything that supports the notion that no one is above the law. And I think it also needs to be crystal clear that there are variations among state laws about statute of limitations. I don't believe any state addresses this issue. And of course, we've never been confronted with this issue at a state level or a federal level. So if we can change federal law to ensure that no one is above it, that statutes don't run, that the unsealing of an indictment can begin that time period, absolutely supportive of that. But the notion that the president should get worried if such a law were to be changed, if he doesn't veto such a law, he should be worried right now, because the worst decision he's ever made has been to accept the nomination of his party for presidency of the United States. He is looking at the destruction of his organization, his foundation, certainly his presidency and its legacy, and possibly even criminal exposure for family members. He should be worried every day, and there's certainly evidence from his behavior that he is.
Frank's absolutely right, Mimi, and there's also sort of a low rumble in political circles that the decision to run for re-election, should he still be there to make that decision, is rooted in part in avoiding criminal prosecution.
Well, look, if that's the case, if that's true, we clearly need to reevaluate this whole system, because no one should be able to or should be motivated by that. But look, to this point, I mean, I think it's great if they enact legislation that makes this a clear issue. It's not clear right now as a legal issue whether the statute of limitations would run or wouldn't run. But the point here is that I think what all of us are saying is it just seems, you know, Trump can say witch hunt about Russia. But at the end of the day, the Southern District, the New York Attorney General's office, the Manhattan DA's office, and lots of other offices and parts of the Department of Justice are uncovering, it seems clear, criminality after criminality that this president was involved in for probably decades. And you can't just throw all that under the label of witch hunt. You know, it just isn't going to work, and it's going to come out. I mean, the facts and the truth are going to come out, and I believe he's going to be held accountable in some way.
Chuck, the witch hunters aren't that coordinated. What do you make of, I mean, have you ever seen anything like this before? Not just in the White House, I can answer that, we have not. But have you ever seen an individual in public life who, when the spotlight shines on him, when you turn the rock over, there's so much criminality, as Mimi said, so much corruption, and so much obstruction. I mean, I understand it's entirely possible that what Robert Mueller presents Congress with is a litany of attempts to obstruct these investigations, to tamper with witnesses, to throw sand in the gears at every turn. Have you ever seen anything like this?
I've seen all sorts of criminals do all sorts of desperate and foolish things, including obstruct justice and tamper with witnesses. I don't think I've ever seen such a concerted and prolonged effort. And so, yes, on one hand, it's very easy to answer your question by saying I've never seen anything like this, because nobody's ever seen anything like this. But on the other hand, having been around criminals for a really long time as a prosecutor, I have never seen such a concerted effort. It is stunning. By the way, it's also evidence. It's a consciousness of guilt. When somebody speaks this way or acts this way or tweets this way, sometimes, believe it or not, it's music to the ears of prosecutors, because intent being the hardest thing to prove, we appreciate any help we get, and the president seems to be helping.
All right, Mimi Rocah and Chuck Rosenberg, thank you for starting us off and spending some time with us. After